Forensic artists have successfully reconstructed the faces of many ancient individuals. Thanks to skull structure, tissue thickness data, and impressive technical skills, the results of these reconstructions often bring great surprise to the public around the world. The reason is not because these faces look like growling cave monsters, according to outdated stereotypes. The real reason is that they look very much like someone you might happen to pass on the street without ever glancing back a second time. This raises a profound and scientifically interesting question. That is far more compelling than what we initially imagined. Were ancient people actually attractive by any standard, whether classical or modern? Or have we been completely misimagining their appearance for quite a long time? Let us carefully analyze this issue, because the honest answer requires us to peel apart two completely different questions. These two questions are often unconsciously mixed together in everyday casual discussions. The first question is whether ancient people would be considered attractive according to the specific beauty standards of today's era. The second question is what attractiveness actually represents biologically, and whether ancient people faced similar pressures. The answer to the second question is definitely yes. And this is the key to understanding every other aspect of this topic. Let us begin our analysis from the most core scientific foundations of the problem of morphology. Because attractiveness, even though it may seem like an arbitrary cultural preference that changes with fashion trends, researchers who study aesthetic preferences across cultures have discovered many common traits that appear universally. These traits are consistently favored across an extremely broad range of completely different cultures. Facial symmetry, smooth and even skin, and proportionate ratios between the parts of the head structure. This global consistency is immensely significant because those specific traits are not random. They function like honest signals that are very difficult to fake regarding the underlying health condition of an individual. They also reflect stability in physical development and heritable genetic quality in humans. For example, facial symmetry is often closely linked to stable, uninterrupted development throughout childhood, because severe illnesses, parasitic infections, or prolonged nutritional deficiencies will disrupt this balance. Clean, smooth skin also signals the absence of parasites or active infections. Our brains have evolved to seek out these specific traits because they provide great survival advantages over countless ancient generations. Choosing mates with these traits helped produce healthier offspring with better chances of survival. This means that ancient humans operated under exactly the same biological attractiveness pressures as we do, although the outward cultural packaging may differ. The deep biological machinery for evaluating mates remained the same. An ancient individual with pronounced symmetrical features and healthy skin would immediately have been considered attractive to others. The basic human evaluation system has not changed significantly, even though the cultural highlights above it have greatly shifted. This is precisely what makes the issue far more nuanced and complex than a simple yes or no answer. The skulls of ancient people, especially from earlier periods, often show more prominent and robust brow ridges. Their facial structures were also broader and generally had thicker bones compared to the average modern face. This anatomical feature raises a truly interesting question that we need to face directly. Would these skeletal differences be considered less attractive by modern aesthetic standards? Today's standards often favor finer, smaller, and more delicate bone structure in both sexes. The honest answer to this issue is extremely complex and depends on which specific ancient population we are referring to. Populations living closer to the emergence of modern humans, about 200,000 years ago, had very familiar structures. Their faces resemble modern humans far more than common imagination often pictures. The rough, heavy-featured faces that people tend to think of actually belong to earlier hominins. All those features are associated with Neanderthals, who possessed a distinctively robust facial architecture. This difference existed even during periods when both human species coexisted directly in the same regions. Therefore, the answer to whether ancient people were attractive depends on which specific group of people we are talking about. Grouping all pre-modern human populations into a single category oversimplifies a diverse reality. Let us consider the case of Neanderthals. because this connects to a fascinating area of research. Neanderthals had much larger brow ridges, more projecting midfaces, and overall thicker bones than Homo sapiens. If we evaluate these traits purely by today's mainstream beauty standards, they would be considered unusual. But there is one extremely important detail that we need to note and seriously reflect upon. Homo sapiens and Neanderthals interbred multiple times over a long period of direct contact. This proves that at least some populations of Homo sapiens found Neanderthals attractive enough to pair with, or at minimum, they considered these individuals viable reproductive partners, with whom to produce successive generations of offspring, whatever the specific calculus of cross-species attractiveness was back then. It clearly was not an insurmountable barrier. This detail shows just how flexible and context-dependent standards of attractiveness can be. This flexibility exists even between biological groups that we today classify as entirely different human species. Now let us talk about another extremely important factor: the art of personal adornment and grooming. This is one of the most direct pieces of evidence that ancient people deeply cared about their appearance. This was not a passing thought, but a consistent priority throughout the length of human history. Archaeological evidence shows that the use of red ochre and other pigments as body decoration was very common. This suggests that ancient people actively modified and enhanced their appearance through aesthetic measures. They did this tens of thousands of years before anyone wrote down the first words about beauty standards. Jewelry also represents another compelling category of evidence in modern archaeological studies. Archaeological sites have uncovered many beads made from shells, bone, ivory, and other materials. Dating back very long ago, they were deliberately crafted, perforated, and strung clearly for the purpose of personal adornment. Creating these items required a real investment of time, skill, and valuable raw materials. The consistent appearance of this practice across many independently developing cultures shows that appearance mattered greatly. Proactive beautification beyond practical survival needs directly connects to social status and attractiveness. We also need to mention ancient combs, because this is an often underappreciated piece of evidence on this topic. Archaeologists have found combs crafted from bone, antler, and ivory, dating back many thousands of years. They are specialized grooming tools made intentionally, not accidental byproducts of other activities. Maintaining neat hair requires continuous effort and demonstrates a clear personal investment in appearance. This proves that ancient people actively managed personal grooming with genuine and clear intention. They were not simply existing in a wild, unkempt, and indifferent state, as popular imagination often imposes. Let us broaden our perspective to the larger scope of body modification across the historical record. Many ancient cultures performed painful body modification practices for aesthetic and cultural purposes. Examples include filing teeth into specific patterns, or various forms of scarification and artistic skin cutting. These practices required sustained cultural commitment and a very high tolerance for physical pain. This further reinforces the view that appearance and attractiveness standards carried great weight in ancient societies. It is far from the passive attitude of whatever you naturally look like is fine that some mistaken views suggest. We also need to consider the prehistoric Venus figurines, because this is a controversial category of evidence. These small figurines mostly depict female bodies with highly exaggerated features at the hips and breasts. They appear at many Upper Paleolithic archaeological sites, spanning an extremely wide geographic range. For a long time, popular interpretations considered these figurines as straightforward representations of ancient beauty ideals. They were seen as sketches of the preferred body shape of people at that time, rendered in stone or ivory. However, careful recent scholars have challenged this simple interpretation with many sharp scientific arguments. They point out that the figurines might represent fertility symbolism, or a woman's self-portrait from a top-down perspective, or they served a completely different ritual and symbolic purpose, unrelated to sexual attractiveness preferences. This is an excellent example of why this entire topic demands maximum caution in cultural interpretation. A single ancient artwork does not necessarily tell us for certain what ancient people looked for in a mate. It might be telling a far more complex story about artistic conventions that we are still continuing to study. Now there is a truly interesting question that needs to be directly addressed. Regarding direct evidence of beauty standards, do we have any direct evidence of which specific traits ancient people valued beyond grooming artifacts? This is where the actual evidence becomes thinner and more speculative due to the time gap, because written records explaining specific beauty preferences clearly do not exist for the remote prehistoric period. But when we enter periods with actual historical records from Egypt, Greece, or Mesopotamia, everything changes. We begin to find much clearer evidence of specific beauty standards through texts and art. Factors such as skin tone, ideal body proportions, clothing styles, and ornamentation are described in detail. These standards often varied significantly depending on social class, gender, and specific regional culture. Later historical evidence shows that beauty standards have always been culturally variable and historically specific. Meanwhile, the underlying biological preferences for symmetry and health remain stable beneath that surface. Consider the astonishing changes in beauty standards, even within just the last few centuries of human history. This provides a useful context for understanding just how culturally constructed attractiveness can be. Preferences for body size, skin tone, and facial features all shift markedly according to socioeconomic conditions. For example, body fat represented wealth and food security in some historical contexts. This offers an important lesson to apply back to our central question about ancient people. Attractiveness has never been a single fixed global standard throughout human history. Therefore, imposing a specific modern beauty standard backward onto the past is a flawed approach from the start. Now let us connect this topic to modern forensic facial reconstruction technology. This data is applied directly to the skull to estimate the most probable overall facial appearance. This technique has produced many striking reconstructions of ancient individuals in recent years. Notably, the reconstruction of a Neanderthal woman attracted enormous global public attention. Her face looked familiar, recognizable, and far more human than previous cultural stereotypes suggested. This single example reinforces an important message that runs throughout our entire inquiry. Our popular cultural imagination has greatly exaggerated and distorted the appearance of ancient people. Those wild images are not supported by actual scientific evidence from archaeology and anatomy. This distinction is extremely important, but is often overlooked in casual conversations about history. Like any modern population, ancient human populations certainly contained a full range of individual variation. Some individuals would possess facial symmetry, healthy skin, and ideal proportions that trigger strong attraction responses, while others, due to disease, injury, or natural variation, would exhibit fewer of those traits. Asking whether ancient people were attractive is like asking whether modern people are attractive, requiring a universal answer. No single answer can be given for all 8 billion people currently living on the planet. The accurate answer is that ancient populations also contained real individual variation in biological attractiveness. We also need to consider the factor of nutrition and overall health, because it directly connects to evolutionary biology. Ancient people facing chronic nutritional stress or parasitic infections would show clear signs in their appearance. Muscle wasting, poor skin quality, and dull hair due to nutritional deficiencies are unmistakable manifestations. This means that the specific historical circumstances of a population would directly impact their appearance. A period of resource abundance would produce a healthier and more attractive appearance than times of hardship and famine. When scientists reconstruct the face of an ancient individual from a specific skeleton, they are capturing a moment. That moment belongs to a single unique individual, living within their very specific environmental and health context. Overall, modern science is helping us tear down the veils of biased misconceptions about our ancestors. They were not crude creatures standing on the sidelines of the concept of beauty, as fantasy films depict. They were real human beings carrying the genetic codes that shaped our very own attractiveness standards today. That attractiveness is a continuous dance between enduring biological programs and flexible human cultural creations. And when we look at their reconstructed faces, we are essentially looking into a mirror reflecting ourselves, an appearance that is both familiar and unfamiliar, yet always deeply human across thousands of years of evolutionary history.